everybody. Welcome back to Help Me Parent. With me, as always, I have Dr. Ellen Moore. Hello.
Good morning.
And with us today, we have Anthony Rios.
Good morning.
Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wonderful. My name's Anthony Rios. I am fortunate enough to be the Reach Pastor here at the Ark. I am, more importantly, a wife of over 20 years and got 2 beautiful children.
You're a wife?
I mean, shoot. Dang, don't put that. See, there are edits in this, right?
No.
I am a husband to a wife. Dang it. I am a husband to a wonderful wife. Look, I practiced. I am a husband to a wonderful wife of over 20 years. I've got 2 beautiful children, Austin and Alyssa. Alyssa is 21 years old, and it's Austin's birthday today. He turned 9, so we're certainly celebrating with him today.
Nice. Well, welcome to the podcast. Great start.
A very unassuming. This is like Anthony.
That's very
typical.
appropriate
Yes,
start.
Appropriate.
Yes,
But I was hoping it was going to be dad joke.
No, I have been banned from telling dad jokes.
Okay, all
we
right.
did a dad episode, and I was like, guys, I have 20 questions, and they were all like, no.
Okay, all right.
So no dad jokes are banned from the Help Me Parent podcast. It's okay. I'm going through therapy. It's fine. All right. So today we are continuing our conversation. We've been focusing the past few episodes about the different age groups that kids are. They started as babies, toddlers, and now we've arrived to the glorious elementary age. Which is a stage you're in.
Right.
And you also were in about 10, 12 years ago.
That is correct.
So this is the age where they are really starting to put everything together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're exposed to a lot more. Mm-hmm. They're going through a lot more than they were when they were little. So tough conversations arise. They ask tough questions, and tough conversations are had. So how do you navigate tough conversations with kids this age?
Yeah.
I think one thing that I just want to say up front about this, we've talked about the different stages of parenting and how you start off, just as a disciplinarian, and then you become a trainer, then a coach, then a friend. So elementary, we are in the throes of training. Everything is training. The thing about training is you can't say it just once and then they've been trained. It's a process. Yeah. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So we're in a training process where there's lots of repetition. And we are in a stage where developmentally, their mental development, their social development, emotional development, and spiritual development, they are in a stage where they not only want, but they actually need the moral reason why for whatever it is you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do is parenting is not just about behavior modification and getting them to act the right way or say the right thing in this circumstances so that they don't embarrass us.
Right, yeah.
The point of parenting is give them the tools, help them become the kind of people who know how to think, who know how to value people, value themselves, value God, and show them and teach them and train them how that shows up in everyday life, so that when they get in situations, there's no way we can expose them to every situation they're ever going to be exposed in.
Right.
So we're teaching principles, we're teaching values, and the only way to teach them is to talk about them and to give them this moral reason why. So we've talked about it before with a little one, maybe a kindergartner or something. You're saying, okay, we're about to go into the store. We're not going to run in the store. Why do we not run? Because there are other people in there. And people are important. They're important to God. They're important to us. We would never want to accidentally run into somebody and knock them over. Or all of the employees have worked so hard on setting up all of the food in the store. We would not want to knock it all down. So we're giving these little moral reason why. Oh, so next time it's not about not running in the store. It's about being respectful of people. And so we're giving them these reasons why.
Yeah.
So now, elementary age, it's not just running in the store, but now it's, well, why can't I have my own phone? Or why can't I go to that site? Or why can't I go to that friend's house?
Sure.
And we're having those kinds of conversations.
It's so true. You know, for us as parents, for Chrissy and I, you know, with Austin and Alyssa just being so far separated, removed in age, not just in age, you know, over a decade apart, but just their personalities are completely different. Alyssa was, yes, sir. It was understood. These are the reasons why we don't do this, or these are the reasons why. So for us, Austin is completely different than that. And his personality is exactly what you're describing. He needs not just the structure of a good conversation. He really needs the structure of, you know, Dad, these are the reasons why we don't do this, or why we do this. Yeah. And it's been, you know, not only are those tough conversations between him and I, or Chrissy and him, or Chrissy and I and him, really it's tough conversations for us as parents. Like, and really it requires not just a one-time explanation. These are disciplines that have to be exercised in our everyday walk. Because Austin is that typical kid that he understands and knows that if Dad says something, these are the reasons why. Mom needs to be 100% on the exact same page, or it creates these more awkward conversations around, well, Dad said this, but Mom says this, right? And so for us, it was just, not only are there those conversations tough, you know, from parent to kid, so much as, you know, us as parents need to be on the same page, especially dealing with personalities, you know, that are a bit more challenging, and for good reason, right? He's curious. He wants to know the reasons why we do certain things, and he wants to know the reasons why we don't. And that's okay, right? But it just requires a completely different set of skills to kind of deal with that style of parenting, for sure.
Yeah, because he actually needs to know the reason
100%.
why.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is a very good point. We've talked about it a little bit before, but as much as possible for parents to be prepared, and, you know, going in, here's how we're going to handle this, we're going to handle this. But you're, again, not going to be prepared for every situation and have talked through how we're going to handle something till you're in the moment. And so sometimes something that can happen is, in the moment, Mom and Dad don't agree on how to address this. And so what I have found, because what you're saying is right, Mom and Dad have to be a united front.
100%.
Kids are smart, and they will divide and conquer. They know how to do it.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. So in those moments where we haven't talked about it ahead of time, it's like, oh, this is a new one. And we're kind of looking at each other out of the corner of our eye, or only one parent is there. They give a response, and then the other parent finds out, and it's a different way than they would have responded. In front of the child, we're always a united front. So whoever spoke first, that's what you're going with. And you just got to say, that's what Dad said, that's what Mom said, so that's what it is. Later, when it's just the two of you, you could say, hey, can we talk about this?
Those are always fun conversations.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're great.
Yeah. It's like, what were you thinking when you said that? And so then you can either both adjust or just stick with it. And it's like, you know, I really feel strongly, so let's just stick with it. But being a united front is a really good point.
Yeah, partnering with purpose in parenting, right, is like, there's a method to why and how we kind of do this is, I think, so important, man. I mean, there's been times I can think of, Austin doesn't understand why, you can't go out and play without us knowing, right? Yes, free play is important, right? We understand that we want kids to, be creative and to learn how to work through problems and to learn how to interact with other people. And that's important. But hey, bud, you got to check in at least every hour or so that we know where you are, right?
Yeah.
And here are the reasons why. And so for him, always just being very deliberate with that conversation and explaining exactly why without, coming across as heavy-handed. Really, we're creating partnership, right? Especially with a kid like Austin who just has to know, right? These are the reasons why. And 9 times out of 10, he can get right with that conversation when we're honest, we're upfront. We give parameters, we give guidelines on how to kind of do that. But for him, it's super important that we, like you said, create that united front for sure.
Yeah. What are some tough conversations that come up around this age? That you've experienced when your kids were at this age? What are some of those conversations like?
Well, I mean, this is the age that if you haven't already had the conversation, you should be having conversations about our bodies and all the body parts. You should be having conversations about sex. You should have conversations about pornography and all things digital related.
He's like freaking out.
Serious in here.
You should have conversations about how to choose friends wisely, how we treat people, how the value of people in all of the different ways, how to handle situations where maybe they shouldn't be close friends with someone. Those can be tricky. So there's all kinds of potential tough conversations, but kind of what Anthony was referring to, keeping, as we're doing this, as we're parenting, as we're training during this elementary age, we're doing it with the end in mind. And the end in mind is relationship with our kids, that we want our kids to still want to be with us when they don't have to be.
Sure.
And we want them to have a healthy relationship with us, a healthy relationship with God, and with others. So that's what we want. And so that's the vehicle that we train with, is through relationship, through conversation, where literally nothing is off limits to talk about.
Yep. And I especially think that's important in a digital age where, let's be honest, right? The screen, if you'll call it that, and I'll broadly paint that way, is the new coloring book, right? When I was growing up, we drove in a car and mom gave you a coloring book. It was just a way to kind of pass the time. Really, she was probably tired of me talking and just wanted me to focus on something else.
What?
But
Anthony talk?
But yeah, exactly. But, especially those key elements that you're referencing in a digital age is completely different, right? Alyssa, we didn't really deal with that, until she was, in high school, and it was a kind of a different conversation. The younger these kids are these days, attached to a digital, scenario, right? Or they're watching this on YouTube, and they might be the most innocent of things, but we just never know. I'll never forget. It was a Sunday after church, and we were in line at just getting some fast food, and it's just the three of us, Chrissy, Austin, and myself in the car. And he had his iPad and he was playing a game, and all of a sudden we went through the line, ordered our food, and we're sitting there, and I hear a voice, and I was like, Who is that? We've already passed the line. Like there was shouldn't have really been any other interference or any other voices in the car. And I looked over at my wife and I said, who's he talking to? And this was a game that, was pretty innocent, what we thought, right? And Austin's talking to some kid whom we don't know, right? Yeah. I don't know who he is. And I said, son, who are you talking to? He said, that is my friend in the game. But that just opens up so many different opportunities for kids these days, when we might have the most innocent of intentions. We might have the best plan as it relates to screen time versus family time versus outdoor time. And there's still this element of the unknown, right? And I would consider myself on the, front side of technology and kind of understand that, but it's just completely different. The influences that our kids have, and not just really social media, but what they see on YouTube or what they watch in commercials or how they interact with, other people, these days is sometimes completely different, certainly from decade to decade, and way far removed from, I think, how I was raised. So it brings its own inherent challenges of why, son, these are the reasons why we can't play this type of a game, right? We want to make sure that we protect you, and for all the right reasons, but it certainly adds to the challenge because it ends up being that everyone else is playing. I'm playing with my cousin, or I'm playing, you know what I mean? So the digital age of parenting, is, it's unique all to itself, right?
Yeah.
And how to manage that. And really, I think for me, around all of that, just a side note, is just building realistic expectations around what that is. It is a tool. We like it. We all love it. We enjoy it, but it has its consequences, right?
Yeah.
And we have to be able to really kind of deal with those and address them and talk about them. And this is why we don't do this versus this. But all those issues you're talking about growing up and, experiencing, different things in our body, it completely changes the dynamic when we're talking about parenting a elementary age kid, for sure.
Yeah. And what we want to do is make sure that our voice as the parent, that we are the expert who they always come to.
Yep.
And that happens out of relationship. It used to be, in my generation, the only place to go was to your parents or to an encyclopedia in the library.
Right.
Now there are so many sources, but for us to realize as parents that so many of those sources have an agenda.
Yeah.
And there are people behind some of the sources or creating loopholes through these sources, trying to gain access to our kids, and they have an agenda. And the stats, we've all heard the stats on, how many kids are exposed, how young they are, how often it happens, where it happens, all of those things. I believe we shared in another episode, 30 to 40% of 7 and 8-year-olds have been exposed to some kind of pornographic image. And the majority of that exposure happens through friends. So just because your child doesn't have a device doesn't mean they're not exposed.
That is correct.
And so as much as we can proactively be ready for that and teach them, just like what we're saying, before you go into a store, here's how we're going to handle this. Before you go into this digital world, here's how we're going to handle it. And to not let ourselves be fooled that just because they're playing Minecraft or on YouTube Kids or listening to music on Spotify Kids, that they are safe. They are not.
Yeah.
They are using all of these tools or places where they know kids are, gaming, all of that, and trying to reach them. And so helping our kids be prepared and to say, hey, all right, you can watch this show, you can play this game, and hopefully we've got there's lots of filters that we can have hardware-wise in our homes, which would be very, like that you put on routers and all of that, which are very helpful. And then there are lots of settings that you can do on browsers as well as individual games and apps. So we need to do our homework, do our research on all of that, but then have the conversation with our kids. If you are playing this game or watching this and something pops up, a name pops up that you don't know, that you are not it's not someone we know, or they're showing you something scary, or they're offering to show you something, or a picture pops up, you immediately come let us know.
That's so true.
And when they do, they're not in trouble. It's like, this just came up, or, you know, one of our kids, you know, and this is early on, we had the big old computer on the family desk.
An Apple IIe.
But they typed in and searched sex. And it's like, okay, you're not in trouble, but here's how if you're curious about something, number one, come ask me first. And here's why we don't search it on here. Because you're going to get some misinformation.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure you're getting the right information. So in order for us to be the experts and to have this relationship with our kids, we have to be honest. We have to be able to talk about anything and everything. We have to use the words and then help them be able to navigate it. Yeah. Because again, it's to equip them to be able to do it on their own when they're not in our home.
And I think that's so true about what you said about being the expert. So if you think you are, parents, if you think you are the expert and got it all figured out, trust me, you're already behind. You're already behind with the way technology is and how fast paced it is. What I love about what you said, though, is be willing to have the conversation. Can't be afraid of it anymore. Yeah. Right. We can't shy away from it anymore. Right. It's not the 1994 anymore where we're nervous around these conversations. We as parents have to be willing to have the tough conversations when it arises. Yeah. I'll never forget Austin. You know, for as sweet as he is, this is a funny story. I was going through something, and he said, he told me, Dad, you know, and he was kind of just listening to me articulate this. And he said, Dad, we can pray, right? And I said, son, you know what? And the heavens opened up, and we had this amazing moment where him and I prayed, right? Where him and I just had this, you know, awesome moment. And so he goes into his room, and the next thing I hear and audibly was a bad word, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, what just happened, right? What just happened? But having to walk in there and say, son, this is why we don't do this, right? Where did you hear that? Because that's not something obviously that we use in our home. Where did you hear that? What did you think in your mind when you said that?
Right. Do you know what that means?
Do you know what that means, right?
Right.
And certainly used it in the right context. So, I mean, you know, but that's not something that we say or we talk about. So being willing to be honest enough to say, my kids aren't perfect. Yeah. I don't have it all figured out. I'm not the expert. You know, what do I need to do, or what resources do I need to incorporate to be able to have these conversations in a meaningful level? To me is the key, right? We can't crawl under a rock anymore. We have to be honest with ourselves and say, what do we have to do to make sure that our kids are protected, right? And that we put ourselves in the best possible position. You know, what best practices can I implement? Is it time limits, right? What is it that I need to put in place that helps us with that in that area for sure.
Yeah. Some of the things we talked about in another episode, you know, with kids and devices, with not having them have unmonitored access. So devices only used in public spaces in the home where you can see and hear an unfamiliar voice or whatever, that there are time limits. And because more is caught than taught, I think time limits for parents are also really important. That there are times that the whole family, that this is a device-free zone or time of day. They don't charge in their rooms. They don't have access to it at night. You know, just a lot of those things, which are great conversations to have beforehand for parents to have before the device is introduced, before it's put into the child's hand, or before one is given to the child. Here's how we're going to handle it. We always have access, all of their passwords, all of that. I said it too. We kept that through college. We had full access to their phones all the way through. We were paying for it. And so we absolutely had full access to it to check anytime.
Yeah. Hey, Ellen, you mentioned some of the tough conversations we have to have around, like, their bodies. Like, what are some best practices, coming from someone who maybe didn't do it right? What are some best practices that we as parents can kind of, how do we start that conversation? Like, what does that look like in an age where it's just a little different? Like, what does that look like for someone Austin's age? What are a few best practices maybe that we could implement?
Yeah. I think number one, what you said is just start. Just start a conversation. I read a great article about what every 7-year-old should know about love and sex.
Wow.
And I totally agree with what they said. They should know all of their own body parts and the body parts of the opposite sex. And again, you want to be the expert. You want to be the one to give them this information because you can do it in a healthy way and a correct information. And so here are the body parts. God made us. He made all of our body parts. No body parts are bad, but some are private. And so here are the private parts on a boy, on a girl. No one should ever touch or see your private parts. You should never see or touch somebody else's. Things like that. Every 7-year-old should know what sex is. To know that word, they don't have to know all of the physical details, but to know that this is an expression of love between a man and a woman who are married. That sex and love must go hand in hand. That they should know what pornography is. They should know the definition of the term and what to do in a situation when, not if, somebody says, hey, let me show you something.
Right.
And there's a couple of great resources. There's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and there's a preschool version and an elementary version that is super great with very practical ways to help your child know what to do when somebody shows them something or if something pops up when they're on something else, to know what to do. And it's simple things, but things that they need to know ahead of time what to do, because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, if I tell mom and dad, I'm going to get in trouble because I must have done something. It's like, no, there are people who are trying to get at you. So when they succeed, here's how we're going to handle it. If somebody says, hey, let me show you something on my phone, before you ever look, what are you going to show me? Is it something helpful for me? Do I need to see it? Is it something naked? Is it something like, anything like that? And say, no, I don't want to see it. Or if it's just shown, they immediately cover their eyes and turn away. So just giving them some very practical tools for how to do that. There's some great books to talk about body parts and all of that. Sometimes books are helpful for parents to have the conversation. It's like, hey, instead of let's just sitting down talking about this. I remember one conversation I had with one of our kids, and they're like, I don't want to talk about this. Don't. I said, well, there are some things I want you to know. So I'm going to tell you, you don't have to talk about them, but whenever you have questions, I want you to come to me. And so press through the awkward and just have the conversation. We want to be the expert, and we want to be, as much as possible, the first one to expose them.
One of the things I love that you said was
not to anything bad, but to expose them to the words and definitions.
One of the things I love that you said is, and I think we've all dealt with this. I mean, I dealt with this growing up, was just don't lie, right? Just tell the truth every time. You can never go wrong telling the truth, right? You can never go right. And this was something that we dealt with, Austin, just in these critical conversations, was just tell the truth, bud, right? Like, just be honest, tell the truth. If you do that the first time out, the consequences are way less severe, almost nil, if you're honest and tell the truth. Mm-hmm. We ask you a question, 9 times out of 10, I already know the answer, right? Yeah. Like, like just tell the truth. Yeah. That was really helpful for him to kind of understand that it's okay. When you tell the truth, only good things happen. Mm-hmm. Right. And just enforce that, reiterate that at every stop, every conversation. Hey, when we tell the truth, we win. Right. Yeah. The truth always wins in these scenarios.
Which also means we tell the truth. So when they ask us these questions, that we don't side skirt it, but we're just honest and we answer the questions to the level that they are asking.
Yeah. Because when you're having those conversations in your home, you're opening it up for them to come and talk to you, because from August to September to May, 8 hours a day, they are not in your vision. Like, they are at school, they are around people, around things that they could get exposed to on the bus, when there's iPad time, all this stuff. Yeah. So with that, having those conversations, hey, when somebody shows you something, cover your eyes. How do you then help your child decide? It's another tough topic. Friends. How do you help them choose their friends wisely? Hey, somebody who shows you this probably isn't a good person to hang around. How do you have those conversations to where somebody showed Austin something, but he's super cool. Like, he's my buddy. Like, he's awesome. Yeah. But it's like, no, he's actually probably not a good friend to you. How do you handle those?
Yeah. That's tricky because, people are valuable inherently. Every person has value. Every person is unique and has value. So we want to communicate that and train that. At the same time, there are some who have different values, different perspectives, and again, not a bad thing inherently to be around people who think different and are raised different, have different thoughts and opinions. But it says in Proverbs that that you become like those you spend time with. And so to have the conversations with our kids that some people are going to be able to help you become who God created you to be and who you want to be. And some people aren't going to be helpful. Right. And so it doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that we're rude or unkind to them. But they're probably not the people that we want to choose to play with on the playground. They're probably not ones we're going to invite to our birthday parties. Because we want to be closest with those who are going to help us become who God wants us to be.
So true.
So somebody who, okay, this kid, my friend, showed me something today and I don't think it was right. Okay, what did he show you? How did you handle it? Okay, that was a great way to handle it. Or, you know what, next time, maybe you should do this. Say no, put it away, and go tell an adult. If it happens one time, does that mean I can't be his friend? It's like, no, it doesn't mean you can't be his friend, but maybe you are just careful. You're more careful around him. It happens again, and it's like, okay, maybe if this is what he is choosing, the kind of actions he's choosing to take, it could be something digital related, or it could be somebody who is just continually disrespectful to their teacher, or somebody continually bullying other kids. Okay, well, let's ask ourselves, is that the kind of person you want to be? Say, well, they don't bully me, they just do this. Well, do you want to be the kind of person who bullies other people, or people are afraid when you come around? No. Okay, so we're going to choose to spend the majority of our time with people who help us become who we want to be and who God wants us to be.
It's so true. I think we've all, growing up, dealt with this. My parents used to, well, you can't go spend the night at so-and-so's house. Or you can't go to your cousin's house.
Yeah.
And really, I think what they were trying to teach me was trust, right?
Yeah.
There's an element of trust in that conversation that us as parents, sometimes maybe we don't do the best job of conveying, right? Without just saying, just trust me, right?
Yeah.
And I know for Austin, this has been, because he's very social. He wants to go outside and play. And, Austin, you can't go play in the ditch, right? And here are the reasons why. Well, Dad, it was this kid that wanted us to go play in the ditch. Well, what did we say? What did we talk about? Well, it was him. Well, then maybe you need to do a better job of choosing kind of the people that you're around, right? If you're saying, and I believe you, I trust, you're telling me the truth, but yet you were still in the ditch, right? You're in the ditch with him. How did you arrive at that? So guess what? Next time you're not going to be able to spend as much time outside playing with that kid, or whatever the scenario might be. But I think for us as parents, when the better, and I know it's going to sound sort of cliches, but that we build that bridge of trust, that they believe us, right? That we're trying to do the very best we can to put them in situations and friend groups that allow them to grow in their friends from church are always great. People that people that you do life with are always good people. And I think it's also important too, when our kids go over to someone's house, who are those parents? Who is their family, right? Get to know them, right? If the better job that we do as parents, I believe, of knowing who our kids are hanging around with, and really knowing their families, knowing what they're about, what do they do? Do they have the same values as we do as a family? The better position you'll be in to avoid some of those challenging conversations about, well, you can't go to their house, and here are the reasons why. When we do our job up front and sort of understand those people, I think you'll put us in a better spot.
Yes, I agree. I will say one thing, and I wish this weren't true, but it is true. Just because we go to church together doesn't mean we have the same values.
Sure.
Or same practices. Yeah. And so I would say even there, we have to be wise.
Right.
And just because, well, they go to church or they go to our church isn't necessarily they're going to be the best person for you to be best friends with.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. With your kids hanging around other kids at this age, and as they continue to grow, their friends' voices do become very loud in their life. How can a parent make sure their voice is still respected or still as an authority in their life? How can you teach your kids? Yes, there are going to be people who influence, but without saying, I'm your parent. How do you say, I'm your parent?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the purpose of this whole training stage from like 5 or 6 to about 12, because this is the time when our voice as parents is the loudest. So we want to make sure we're using it, that we are developing relationship, we're having conversations, we are giving moral reason why, all of those things, so that as the voices of friends and then media and all of these other influence, as they get louder, as they get older, ours is quieter, but it's still there. And we've been there for the foundation. And that's what's important. Most, a child's or a person's worldview, the way they are going to view the world, the way they're going to view God, the way they're going to view themselves, the value of others, that worldview is pretty much in place by age 13. And it is very difficult for that to change. And so when we put our efforts in this training time, then it's okay when you're training for something, and the trainer is like right there in your ear the whole time as you're running or doing this workout or, whatever you're training for. They're right there in your ear. When you hit the next stage of development and in relationship with our kids, the next stage is a coach. A coach is on the sidelines. Yeah. They're not out on the field with them. So the voice is quieter. It's less obvious when you're out on the field, but it's there. Yeah. And as soon as you come to the sideline, as soon as you come home, you can have the conversation with coach. How did it go out there? As parents, we need to be asking the questions when they come home. Hey, how did it go? At school, did you have any screen time? What did you see on screen time? Did anybody show you anything? And we're just preemptively, not from a place of fear, but from having these conversations because we want them to continue when we become their coach. And then when we become their friend is all the sweeter.
I love it. I love that analogy, of course, for those that know me and our family. I mean, I've been coaching Austin's baseball team since he was young, and there was always two coaches on the field, right? When they were young, in that total training stage. Yeah. Here's what you do. Now as a coach, you're on the side. I love that analogy. But really what we're trying to teach is learned behavior. Do the right thing at the right time, and everything's going to work out, right? We're really trying to develop learned behavior. And really, you talked about them coming in off the sideline. When they do it right, attaboy, great job. Really celebrate those moments. Just a few days ago, Austin lost his electronics, and I wasn't home, and he told his mom, and I didn't tell Chrissy. This is great. I didn't tell my wife that Austin had, unfortunately done something. He lost his electronics for the night, and I got home, and he said, Chrissy said, Austin said he lost his electronics, and man, I was like, Bud, that's awesome, great job. You did exactly. You told mom what the punishment was. It's really honest. Celebrate those moments. When we are still in that training phase, man, we really have to, when they do it right, celebrate. It's so important too, when they do it exactly like we've trained, to celebrate the heck out of that for sure. Yeah. I want to end on the spiritual aspect of where they're at from 6 to 12. There's some things we choose to focus on here. And not that there is an exact answer, but where should a 6 to 12-year-old be in their relationship with Jesus? And how do you implement that into everyday life?
Yeah, I think I'll speak to this first as a children's pastor. So I think for this age group here, there are 5 things we want for kids that we feel like if they have know these things to be true, that these 5 things are part of their worldview, it gives them a great foundation. So that is made the decision to be a friend and follower of Jesus for the rest of their life. Foundational. To know they can talk to God anytime, anywhere about anything. That they love God's word, they love to read it, love to obey it. They treat others like they want to be treated, and they know they're part of God's big plan. I think if kids in the elementary age, if they know, like not just in their head, but in their heart of hearts, that those 5 things, they have a really strong foundation. So how do we instill those? How do we teach those? 90% is, because we say it all the time, more is caught than taught. It happens through modeling. What they see their parents do, how they see parents respond in different situations, that's what sets them up for success. So which again goes back to why these conversations, why relationship with our kids is so important, where they know we're a friend and follower of Jesus, Amen. Where they know we talk to God because we don't always know what to do. And when we don't know what to do, we talk to God and we look in God's word. Mm-hmm. And when they see us doing it and we can tell them, you know what? I had this situation. I didn't know what to do at work, but I asked God to help me. And you know what? Here's how he helped me.
All right.
And we share that with our kids for that we are showing them, we're modeling, we're not just telling them, but we're modeling right. that we treat others like we want to be treated. Yeah. We're treating our kids with respect. We're treating our spouses with respect. That when we talk about our coworkers at home around the dinner table, it's with respect, that we're treating others like we want to be treated, and that we are giving our kids this like hope Amen. For God's plan for their life. Amen. And that plan isn't for when they grow up. That plan mm-hmm. is for right now. When you go to school today, God's got a plan for you. Mm-hmm. How do you think God might use you today? What opportunities do you think? All right, I'm going to have some opportunities at work. You're going to have some opportunities mm-hmm. at school. So let's talk about it tonight right. in the car on the way home or around the dinner table. How did God show up? What was a way that you were able to treat someone well today? Mm-hmm. Was there a time today? You know what? For me, there was a time I blew it today. Mm-hmm. I messed up. What about you? Mm-hmm. And you have those conversations and, you know, okay, well, when we blow it, what do? Mm-hmm. We say, I'm sorry to the person and or to God. Yeah. And you know what? I haven't told God I'm sorry yet for what I did. So I'm going to do that right now in front of them. And you do model it, and then say, would you like to for what happened with you today? And you just have this natural conversation where this is what life with Jesus looks Amen. Like and sounds like.
It's so true. I've been blessed, fortunate, grateful really to have two amazing children that have grown up in church, whether they liked it or not at times, but that have been in a household of faith their entire life. And certainly, yes, more is caught than taught. But man, sometimes and I'll speak to Austin, his faith encourages me, right? Yeah. Even the things that he's picked up at our kids, right? His faith encourages me. I'll never forget this. A few summers ago, for those that know me, I was challenged. I broke my ankle and went through a really difficult time, partially because I'm just not a very good patient and couldn't sit still, but I digress. And I was upset. I was frustrated, and I was in the garage one afternoon. Alyssa was dealing with something in her body, and I'm just in a bad mood. And I'm just in a bad spot, right? It's hot. My grass is dying. I'm worried about sprinklers. And Austin can sense this. Yeah. He's picking this up in me. And he's like, Dad, what's wrong? What's this? I said, son, it's hot. You know, I'm trying to figure the sprinklers out. And I'm just, in my own way, right? Yeah. I'm in my own frustration. Mm-hmm. And he says, Dad, we can pray, right? And I was like, you know what, son? We can pray. We can pray that it's going to rain today. And no clouds in the sky, sunny day. And he's like, yeah, we can pray that it'll rain. And I said, you know what, bud? We absolutely, immediately, the Lord reminded me that the faith of a child is an amazing thing. And truthfully, right in that moment as I'm praying, I'm like, Lord, please let it rain. Please. Lord, please just let it rain. And you know what? That afternoon, without a cloud in the sky, just one of those moments that the Lord gave me and showed me that what he's learning, what he's developing in himself, because it rained, right? And I was able to say, son, look, that's his default. You know what, Dad? We can pray. Last night our power went out. And again, I find myself in this situation. And he said, Dad, let's pray. And I said, you know what, son, let's pray. Right. So parents, teach your kids how to pray. Teach them that it's okay, right? Mm-hmm. That God is there with us, that he has an excellent plan for our life, and that his mercies are new every morning. right? That we can wake up the next day and say, you know what, as long as I'm leaning on Jesus, it's going to be all right. Right. And so he's definitely an excellent example of that. That boy loves to pray. He really does. And I'm grateful and honored. You know, we say it all the time, you know, church plus home equals strong, but it really does.
Yeah.
It really does. And I'm grateful that my kids have been in an environment of faith their whole life.
Right. Yeah. And that's the perfect example of why parenting is about relationship. Yeah. Relationship is not one-sided. So there are going to be times that we lead the way and speak truth and life to our kids.
Right.
And there's going to be times that they do it to us. That's a relationship.
Right. Yeah. That's so true.
Modeling it, communicating with them, and just having the conversation through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's the age of elementary.
It really is. It really is.
Well, thank you, Anthony,
for
sitting with us, even though you were drinking coffee. We drink tea.
This is a tea zone.
This is a tea zone.
Okay. I got you. Definitely a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
But thank you for joining us.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Just remember that you can parent and we can help.